One is coaching the threes and the fours, so it's kind of cool to see.
Nash Hutmaker, how big of a step does he need to take this year?
Yeah, I think Nash got some good experience last year. He was in a lot of football plays, but he's just got to become a guy that's I think he belongs in this league. I think that he should be out there playing football along with a lot of those defensive linemen. But those guys, I think there's a natural progression that teams go through and players go through, and it's probably believing they can play or they can win, and then knowing they can play and they can win. And I think those young D linemen are at that phase where they need to know they're going to walk out there and they're going to be good football players.
Who are you going to look at as far as JoJo and Cam Taylor in the secondary as kind of the guys that are maybe will step up for those guys?
Yeah, I think that back end, that defensive back group, counting the nickel in that group too, as JoJo played. Obviously Deontay's gone and Markel's gone and JoJo's gone and Cam's gone, but there's players that were in the program that I feel good about. There's players that have transferred in and or come from junior college, or freshmen that are even here right now that have all looked really well in practice. So I can't tell you who those people are going to be. There's going to be a lot of battling right now, and then we're going to find out who's going to be the next player at that nickel position. Is it a guy that's already in that room? Is it Javen Wright? Is it Isaac Gifford? Is it one of those other guys, or do we need to pull that position from corner safety depending on who wins one of those battles on the outside? So that'll be that's always the fun thing for me is figuring out who's the best 11, getting them on the field and finding a position for those guys.
When you first got here in 2018, I think you may have mentioned this earlier in the interview, going from an odd front to an even front defense. Just what are the benefits of playing an even front defense, I guess, here?
Well, I think there's pluses and minuses about playing every defense, and it kind of probably depends on who you have in the program, what's your assets, what's your liabilities, and then who are you playing week to week. What personnel group does it allow us to match up best with? And right now, with what's going on in the Big Ten, being able to play some of the four-man front, some of the even stuff, whatever you guys call it, that allows us to match up versus 10 personnel and 11 personnel a little better. And even some 12, depending on what the other teams are doing, then being able to jump into odd with the guys understanding the spacing and understanding the fits and the system and how it all works together, being able to jump in those things versus two backs and or 12 personnel with two big tight ends. I think it's being multiple is good. Just like I heard Coach Whipple say, if they get in 6 offensive linemen or 4 receivers or whatever they're going to do, somebody has to work on it. Us being able to jump into odd spacing versus 11 and or even versus 12, that gives offense something else to work on for us too.
I know JoJo did so many things this most recent year. When you think about that position, and maybe the thing that you're like, if I got to pick one or the other, what would you like that player to be able to do? Assuming he can't do everything JoJo did, what was the thing that you liked most about what JoJo took away from opposing offenses?
Well, I think JoJo had a pretty unique skill set where he was a big guy, so he could be physical in the run game. He was a good blitzer off the edge, but he was also had the movement skills to be able to cover just about anybody we played. Not to say that we'd always want him out there one-on-one versus everybody, but he could go out there in coverage versus just about anybody we played. When you look at that person at that position, that's a unique skill set to be able to do both. When we find out whoever that's going to be, whatever their assets are, we have to use those, and their liabilities, we have to try to cover it up. So before in our defense, it's been a corner, and we played more coverage with that guy and got him out of the run fit some, and sometimes it's been more of a linebacker-ish player, and he's going to be, in zone coverages underneath. He's going to be in the run fit heavily. We're going to get him out of the coverage liabilities that he has, and hopefully you got a player, similar to JoJo. I don't think you can ever say, well, this is the next JoJo or the next Cam or the next anybody, because they're all individuals. But if you have a guy that has a similar skill set, then you can kind of have the best of both worlds.
Is Kolarvik got potential?
Yep. He's going to get some work there this spring for sure.
Is there similarities between his athleticism and JoJo? I know he's not as tall as JoJo.
Yeah. I think he's a guy that can, he can really run, and I don't know what his ability is yet, because I've seen him today. I've watched, before we came up here, we watched probably 20 plays before we got up here. So I need to see what he can do in that coverage modality. I think we know what he's really good around the football. He can play in the run. He can definitely blitz off the edge. Now I need to see what he can do out there in coverage a little bit.
What are Isaac and Javen's strengths, I guess, in that nickel role?
Yeah, I think Isaac is close to JoJo, where he has a pretty good skill set. He played safety in high school. Right now, JoJo probably a little bit better in coverage than Isaac. Isaac might be a little bit better around the ball. Javen, he's been so banged up I think, but he's got the sky's the limit for his skill set. He started at corner for us, and he fastly grew out of that. I mean, he's 6'3" plus, and he's got some good weight on him. So his coverage ability is really good for his size, which is an extreme plus.
Garrett's already lost his voice, Garrett Nelson.
Yeah.
How nice is it to have a veteran guy like that to pump up the guys vocally when your first game is 6 months away? Everyone's excited on day one of spring practice, I'm sure, but day 2, day 3, day 4 to have a guy like Nelson.
Yeah, and I think, leadership can come from anywhere. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best player. It doesn't even have to be a player that plays. But normally when your best players are your leaders, that probably carries the most weight. And to have a guy like that that's got so much respect for the way that he works, just the way that he carries himself, the way that he does everything you ask him to do. And then on top of it, he's been a 2-year starter or whatever, and he's played a lot of good football. I think when you have a guy like that that's barking, and it means a lot. And he's done it. I think when he was young, he was just, he was a pit bull out there, and he was, saying things, and he probably didn't even know what he was saying. And he's fine-tuned that leadership where I think he kind of understands now, when do I need to be positive with somebody, when do I need to come down on somebody. So I thought he's done a really good job especially the winter, of developing the leadership.
What about guys that, like Caleb Tanner, some of those guys trying to get more pressure on the quarterback this year? What do you see from that?
Yeah, I think those guys, when you go back and watch the film, the exciting thing was those guys, their pass rush ability and their mechanics and what they did on film greatly improved. Now, the disappointing thing was we left a few out there that I know myself and Coach Dawson watching it thought that they could have definitely had those sacks. So I think if Coach Dawson, he's already been working on that with those guys, and if we can just get to some of those ones that we left on the table, I think that pass rush, Garrett and Caleb and Blaze and Jamari, and then the inside guys are rushing the passer better too. So in that thing, it's really got to work together, because sometimes when you got just werewolves rushing off the edge, you've got to create that step-up lane, and those inside guys got it. And when those guys are collapsing the edge, those inside guys got to push that quarterback right and left, and we've got to be able to cage that quarterback and then get him, sack the guy. So I think, but I'm excited about where those guys are at. I watched them today. No pad practice, probably not a very fair evaluation of anybody, but those guys looked like they knew what they were doing. They looked like they had great effort rushes, and I like the mechanics out there.
We talked to
Where does defensive line depth and development and that kind of fall on your list of priorities this spring, especially with Stilley and Daniels and all those guys that are no longer there? It's quite a lot of snaps for them.
Yeah, the defensive line depth, along with, finding out who's going to play in the back end, probably the top two priorities as far as personnel goes. The good news about the defensive line is because of the attrition, those guys going to the NFL draft, there's a lot of reps to go around, and those guys are going to get a ton of reps, which is a blessing and a curse sometimes when you're a defensive lineman. You want the reps, but it's a long day of practice. But I think that we're going to have a huge library of reps to kind of look at, show them what they've done right, show them what they've done wrong, and to really evaluate who should be number one, who should be number two, and so on and so on.
We talked to Ty, and he said that the biggest thing for him individually is gap integrity and just not getting moved out of this gap. Is that what you saw? And just what about his progression? And he's going to be a pretty important guy in that room this year, right?
Yeah, he's going to be really important. I think he's right. There were some times last year where he was not in the right spot, which happens with a young guy. I mean, everybody. The crazy thing about Ty is everybody thinks that guy's been around here forever, and he's like a young guy. I mean, he's not that old. So I think that his progression that he's made in the last couple of years is good. Now he needs to get that thing to the next level. He's been there. He's done that. He knows what it's like to play in games in Memorial Stadium. He knows what it's like to play against, last year he played against Ohio State. He played against Michigan. He knows what it's like to play against those guys. Now can he win those one-on-one battles? Can he get some more TFLs for us? Can he stay in his gap and make the ball bounce?
having some new quarterbacks on the other side of the ball challenge your pass rush this year compared to maybe having seen, Martinez so many years after years in the backfield?
Yeah, I think it challenges everybody. Every quarterback has their own. I know Coach Whipple would probably disagree, saying that they should be going here to here to here, but every quarterback kind of knows where he wants to throw the ball. Some guys would like to get it downfield. Some guys like to get the easy throws in. Some guys would rather run it than throw it. Some guys would rather hang in the pocket. So it's going to be interesting to see those guys and see how that develops. And I think these guys are a little bit more pocket passers, so I think we're going to get a little bit more opportunity to rush the passer in the spring, and hopefully we can get home. It also challenges the DBs. I don't know, seeing the same guy like you alluded to, you can kind of know where his eyes are going. Is he going to look at the guy he's throwing at? Is he going to look and throw to the next guy? So seeing some new faces, some new arms in there is going to be really good for the defense.
Is Bill helping at all on defense, or is he just strictly special teams?
No, Bill's going to help us some on defense. Right now he had a lot of things to get organized with special teams, but he coached a couple of defensive drills today, so we're looking forward to having Bill help us on defense.
What group? And he's kind of coached all over.
Yeah, he's gonna right now he's gonna help everywhere. Just kind of flow a little bit. Obviously he's got some experience with the defensive backs. I've been coaching the nickels right now, but he's got some experience with those. So I think that with that back seven is probably where he feels the most comfortable, even though he did coach a little bit on the defensive line. So I think right now, for us just to use him in individual drills and it might be some of those drills where everybody has to go, like you're playing buzz reroute, safeties, nickels, linebackers, everybody has to get in that drill work, but that's something that he can do for us and take that drill over with ease and be able to really free up some hands so we can individualize the practice a little bit more.
I know nobody's job is safe in the secondary, but Quentin Newsome, what do you think the next step for him is?
Yeah, I think, you watch the film, and Quentin, when you watch it, Quentin looks like a lot of the other players in the Big Ten, but he looked like a young guy, and he looked like a guy that, he just didn't know, was it time to jump that pass? Was it time to pull back? And those things, I even saw some today where looks like his body language, his eyes, just his confidence has progressed a lot. So I'm just looking for Quentin to, make a few more of those plays. And he didn't give up a bunch of stuff last year. He played really good football, but I think there's some plays that he left out there that maybe a vet wouldn't. And I think that's the next step for him is to go get some of those balls.
We know a couple of the guys in that room, the nickels that you're coaching, but who all is in there, and how do you think about sort of tailoring to different skill sets, obviously, maybe that you had?
Yeah, right now, the guys that are in that room, until we figure out how the back end falls into place, right now you've got Isaac Gifford's in there, Chris Kolarvik, as you guys already alluded to, Javen Wright, John Bullock, and Grant Booter are in there right now with me.
So with Gifford, is he a guy? I mean, could he play sort of the true middle of the field safety if you needed him to?
Yeah,
at this level?
I think Isaac could easily go. Isaac's super smart, football wise, especially. So I think that he's got no issue if we want to move him back to safety. Either one, we could play field or boundary. He could play down there in the nickel, but I don't think. I like Isaac a lot because of his position flex.
With Javen, I mean, he obviously has been through a lot health-wise. What is it like to? I mean, Frost, I think last month said he was hoping to be able to get out on the field. Do you have him this spring to be able to do quite a bit?
Yeah. So right now, we want to make sure we take it slow with him, so we have him for the season. But right now, he's out there doing limited things, and we'll progress him into full go here. Hopefully, that spring break, as we get 2 weeks in, then we get a spring break. Hopefully, after spring break, that's when we can see if some of these guys that are a little banged up, we can get them back more in a full capacity.
You arguably know Coach Frost better than any one of the assistants right now. I mean, the fact that he was willing to kind of give the keys to the car to another offensive coordinator, I mean, what does that say about how humble he is and how much he's really trying to make it work here?
Yeah, I think, as much as all of us want our individual piece to work, we want Nebraska to work. And I think Coach Frost, he's the head football coach, and he has to do whatever he has to do to make the team run more efficiently, improve in some areas where we were maybe, down a little bit. And, I think that he thought in his heart that hiring somebody he felt comfortable with to be the offensive coordinator could free him up to do a lot of other things. And at Nebraska, there's so many things that go into being the head coach, whether it's meeting with, boosters and administration and doing events off campus, but also, that allows him to be in special teams more, to be over. Today he came over with us to the DBs, and he was in the DB individual drills, and I think those will give those guys on defense a little bit more comfort with him as he's around. But I think that what he's done with the offensive staff is just, shows his willingness to make some changes, evaluate the program, evaluate himself probably even, and then what can I do to fix it? And I think right now this is what he feels like is the best way to make the program better, and I'm all for it.
When you look at just the amount of attrition that's going on in college football right now, do you think at all about the approach you take with your kids in terms of making them feel engaged, making them feel like there's a reason to stay here and not just maybe jump in the portal if they're not exactly where they think they should be?
Yeah, I think, and it's becoming harder and harder. There's no secret to that. But I think that there's got to be some light at the end of the tunnel, and it's got to be hard, a hard decision. And there's a lot of guys that across the country that probably would like a fresh start, or, to be somewhere where they think they'll be more successful. But I think that, when you treat the kids right, and when they know that you care about them on an individual basis, it makes that decision really hard, and hopefully we can keep these guys around here for as long as we can, hopefully from the time they start their career to the time they end it. But it's just the way of college football, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't make the rules. But now it's become a little bit of a transfer culture, right? If you don't like something, or you feel like somebody talked to you wrong, or you want a different number, or you want a different position, you can just walk out the door, which I think at the beginning of this thing, everybody kind of thought that was a good thing, but it's not. And for a lot of these guys that are leaving across the country, they're finding out that they're not in a better spot than they were, or they're not in any spot because they're just sitting in the portal. But I think when you treat the kids right, and they know that you love them, and they know you care about them, and they know that every decision Coach Chins makes, or whoever my coach is, every decision they make is because they want me to be successful, then it's harder to leave. Not to say that I won't leave, but it's harder.
In some ways, I'm sure that goes back to the recruitment at the start too, and sort of how you approach with them. But does that have to factor into the evaluation too? Just the kind of kids you're looking for when you talk about that culture that we're kind of living in now?
Yeah, I think it does. I think right now it's more important than ever that the high school young guys that you recruit, there's going to be guys from the portal coming into our program, coming into every program across the country, and those guys are maybe a one semester guy. So that piece is a little bit different. But those guys that you're recruiting in high school now, that's definitely one thing I'm looking at. Is this guy going to stay in our program? Or is it going to get hard early, and he's the guy that could potentially leave? And not that we have the answers. You can't look into a crystal ball and tell it. But I don't think if you're not talking about that piece, then you got a major problem, and you're setting yourself up for a lot of failure. And not to say we haven't made some mistakes in the past doing it, but I think that's something moving forward that's going to be more and more important as when you're recruiting a high school guy.
Is that tough too with a guy like if you take a guy like Omar, do you have to kind of factor in like this could affect some guys feeling like?
There's no question. Every time that you take a guy in the portal, you might encourage somebody else that they should maybe look for another opportunity for themselves. But once again, this portal, this transfer culture that college football has created, it's if somebody leaves, somebody else is coming in. It's not like somebody leaves and everybody's like, oh man, I can't believe somebody else is coming in. It's become more like the NFL. A junior left, you better get a junior in to replace him. So, but there's always, you got to look at, for every action, what will the reaction be, or what will the potential reaction be?
That's going to be my question. I mean, when you have a guy coming in, the guys that are coming in from the portal is generally a very quick recruitment, or you probably are going off of sources and guys and things like that. I mean, how do you, when you see him on the field today, I mean, you kind of like, okay, this guy looks how I thought he would look, or how do you kind of approach that with finally getting to see him move around? Yeah,
and I think you were doing that during, we're doing that during the winter conditioning and all those types of things. Every time we went out to one of those drills where the staff was out there, you're kind of looking at those, everybody, the high school guys that are early enrollees, the junior college guys, the portal guys, and you're kind of looking at like, oh man, like please be good, you know what I mean? But fortunately, all the guys that have come into our program right now on defense, like I've been watching them very close. The high school guys, the junior college guys, the transfers, they've all been not only a pleasant surprise by athletic ability, but also by their attitude and their character and their work ethic. So that's been a really surprising, humbling piece of the puzzle because it could easily go the other way.
A couple of the players kind of remarked on the feeling of momentum and excitement around the spring. You have a lot of early enrollees, new guys coming in. I mean, how much does just new faces add to that feeling, I guess?
Well, I think that having the new faces, adds a lot to it. And now it could go the complete opposite way, depending on how those new faces interact with the staff and the rest of the team in that locker room. And like I said, fortunately, the new faces that we've added, coaching staff and player-wise, have added a tremendous amount, both with their ability on the field and with their character and just their ability to mesh with the team off the field. So I think that those two things combined have added a ton of momentum for us going into spring ball.
Dawson sort of said naturally that with Blaze and Jamari, they maybe slide up a little bit with Feldarius leaving. You recruited Jamari, didn't you, out of Alabama? What kind of growth have you seen? Because he didn't play all that much high school football, right?
Yeah, no, Jamari. I'm proud of Jamari because, he plays very limited high school football. He was a basketball guy, and he goes out and he's the best player. And then he comes to Nebraska, and all of a sudden you're buried in the depth chart a little bit, and you're playing scout team. And that one is easy to say, hey, I'm going back to Mobile, Alabama, and he didn't. He fought through it. He worked through it. He's done everything the right way, and now this spring he's going to get a chance to showcase his talents up there running with the ones and the twos, and I think it's going to be really good. I don't know yet. I mean, that's up to him a little bit, both him and Blaze, but I'm really excited to watch both those two guys because they've done the work, they've done everything that's been asked of them, and now it's becoming a little bit of their time.
Those guys, I mean, obviously, like you said, they have to do it, but just physically, those two are a little bit different frame-wise, right? Aren't they than the other guys you have playing outside linebacker?
Yeah, I mean, they're, as compared to, they're it's almost like Jamari's a little bit bigger than Caleb and Blaze is a little bit bigger than Garrett, but they're kind of built the same way, those guys.
5 more minutes, guys. Those younger guys, the Jalen Weaver, Usman Buckley, what did they kind of get out of that redshirt year last year, and where are they kind of at coming into the right year?
Well, you hope with defensive linemen, and that's where it's tough with all these transfer things, right? It's like defensive line, offensive line. In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, but it's really, really hard to play in the Big Ten as a freshman offense or defensive lineman because this is a grown man league. And I think it's hard for some of those guys when they've got buddies, elsewhere or other positions, and their buddies are probably getting to play a little bit on special teams because, they're a DB or whatever, and they're saying, how come you're not playing? Well, that's not how it works in the Big Ten. This is a league where you must be developed as a defensive line or an offensive line. So I'm hoping what they got out of last year was a little bit of comfort in being in the system and being in this style of play and being in the room with grown men, and then also, in the weight room, in the summer conditioning, the winter conditioning, just being on the scout team last year, they started to realize that even though I'm a young guy, I belong here. I deserve to be here. Now I got to work, and it's going to be my turn to get some real meaningful reps in spring football.
Sean Singleton was kind of an untraditional junior college player, and yet you guys, I think, were pretty excited to get him. So the one day of practice, what was your impression of him as a person over the first month he was here?
Yeah, Deshaun's a pretty quiet guy, but once again, he's one of those guys like all those new guys, however they got here. He just came in, he worked, and I watched him just like anybody would, like the first workout when it's the whole team there and everybody's screaming and everybody's, a little bit worked up. I watched him. He's kind of looking around, he's got the fish out of water look. And then, the next time he's better. And by the third time, he looks like he's been here for, 2 or 3 years. So just really happy with the way that he's progressed through this winter conditioning phase, and also just the way that he carries himself. He's up here all the time, looking for Coach Fish, looking for one of the graduate assistants, looking for somebody to watch film with or go over the playbook with. So he's going to be fine because he goes about things the right way, and he wants to get better.
Is it fair to say that one of those four, whether it's him or Javi or Omar Brown or Tommy Hill, one of those four, maybe two of those four have to really pan out like right away, they have to play a lot, right?
Absolutely. I expect all those guys to play, and I expect them to play on defense, and I expect them to play on special teams. We all know that it's just the way life works, but somebody's going to be the starter and somebody's going to be a rotational guy, but all those guys got to come in and play right away.
With Omar Brown, that was even by portal standards, that was a quick one. What did you like about him in the short time you had to evaluate him? And then also, I know he was hurt late last year. Is he able to do some stuff for you this spring, or is he limited?
Yeah, he's going to definitely be limited for us this spring, but hopefully he'll be able to. One of those guys after spring break. Hopefully he'll be able to get back in there and show us what he's got. He's just got a ton of good film from the time he was, a young guy till the time he decided to move on. And obviously, me being at Northern Iowa, I got a bunch of resources to call once he gets in that thing and find out. It's not like all these other guys where somebody gets in the portal and I got to go watch the film and try to find somebody to call. The second he goes in the portal, I can call a bunch of guys that have coached there or got done playing there, or guys that were there with him when he was young. So we have a bunch of resources that way. So that was a pretty easy one.
How are making those portal evaluations and just, like you said, probably trying to get good intel on players and maybe why they're in the portal too?
Yeah, and I think, it was kind of weird at first, but it's become pretty standard. I guess is a bad word, but at first I was like, man, should I call this guy? He's probably mad that this guy's going to leave. You know what I mean? But same guys, they call me, and my deal is, I want to help. I want to help the kids. I want to help my friends that are in the coaching business. So if somebody can help them, and they're a good guy and all that kind of thing, I'm going to be very truthful with them. I'm going to tell them why they left. I'm going to tell them, what their pluses and minuses are, and but I think it's very helpful when you have someone you can trust that's in that program that can give you an honest evaluation. Then you got to watch the film. I mean, you got to make your own choice. But at some point, just like we talked about, if a guy's got good film, but you call up the coach and he's a bad guy, do you want that guy? So it's very helpful to have somebody that you trust.
Maybe this is a weird question, but what player have you gotten the most calls about this last year?
I think they're probably all pretty even. I mean, because what happens is just nobody's different. It's like if somebody goes in the portal, every head coach or every recruiting coordinator or whatever, find out about that guy, and even if it's, he hasn't taken a snap, find out about him. Well, he's a 2-time All-American, find out about him. So it's just everybody's calling,